All right. Well, last night we had a big election day in many parts of the country, and once again, the Democrats suffered some big-time defeats, including the Kentucky gubernatorial seat, which they've held for the better part of the last half century. Democrats now hold just 17 governorships across the country, down from 29 in 2008. And since Obama was elected, Democrats have lost over 900 state legislature seats, 69 House seats, 13 Senate seats. Peter, how big of a crisis is the Democratic Party in right now, and what do we need to do to start winning back some of these seats?
Well, this is certainly not good for the Democrats. I mean, there's always the saying that these kind of state elections are on local issues, and presidential elections are on larger issues and national and international issues. And so some would say, fine, this is really not that big a deal as far as the national election is concerned, but I don't know that you can really divide people's minds that sharply. I mean, local issues become national issues when enough people are concerned about them. And this speaks to some of the strengths of the Republicans. The other problem for the Democrats is when you take away all of these local and gubernatorial seats, you're really cutting into the farm team. A lot of governors go on to become presidential candidates and even presidents. Bill Clinton was a governor. Many of the Bushes have been state governors and things like that. And so without a farm team, without that local support, and in fact without the local people, Democrats in office to kind of see things through for you, you do chip away at support for the presidency, and it does raise questions coming up next year if the Republican presidential group can actually field a decent candidate. That's kind of a prerequisite for this.
Well, Josh, I mean, Matt Bevin is a far-right conservative Tea Party type of guy. What does it say when a guy like that can get elected in a state where the Democrats have control for most of our lifetimes?
You know, the Matt Bevin story is very interesting, but I have to challenge the narrative that the Democrats lost big yesterday. I did a story on the site about how these off-cycle elections are actually very good for Democrats. On the local level, school districts, things like that, teachers' unions come out in full force, whereas most of the electorate stays home. Also, across the country, here in Pennsylvania, all three state Supreme Court seats went to the Democrats. It went to the Democrats in a lot of their elections. New Jersey got the largest assembly majority for the Democrats in almost 40 years. And I think Democrats also won big in Indianapolis, too. So actually, I think that what this shows is that the pushback against Obama, which has been pretty devastating for Democrats, they found a villain in him that they hadn't had before, since Bill Clinton, really. And so I think that has been like a nice short-term strategy for them. But I think the long-term strategy, and I think we're going to start seeing this next election, especially if the Republicans field someone like Trump or Carson, is that they are going to start losing in these smaller House elections, even some of the governorships, just because the mainstream of the Republican Party is going so far into the fringe of the right wing that, you're losing educated moderates in middle-class to affluent areas where actually in 2016 a lot of the House seats are going to be open.
You're right about the off-season elections, but when you look at the numbers, 900 state legislature seats is nothing to scoff at, and when you look at it, the numbers correspond with the same time frame that the Tea Party rose. So is that really a bad thing for the Republicans? Again, the new Kentucky governor's a Tea Party guy.
Well, maybe. The Tea Party also lost pretty big in the 2014 midterms. Republicans won, no doubt. But with the exception of unseating Eric Cantor, the newness and the excitement behind the Tea Party has started to wane, especially as you get people saying more and more crazy things. So the thing is it's actually no side is won or lost yet. But unless the Republicans are able to rein in, the wall building rhetoric and, just any number of the nutty things they've said, I don't think that they are going to be poised to do well in 2016 or going forward, especially as the electorate ages. Remember, teenagers today, they don't care about gay issues, other culture issues. the way that this generation does or the generation before.
Well, Eric,
so again, they may do well now, but in 10 years.
Eric, we're talking about huge losses in the state and local elections. Do you think that the Republicans who now have more than 30 gubernatorial seats can pull off an upset come 2016 nationally?
I think that they can, because one thing about Republican voters is that they always vote no matter what. They turn out and they vote. Democrats tend to suffer from voter apathy, where if a candidate doesn't interest them, then they say, my vote doesn't matter. They don't show up. And that is a massive problem. Even though a large portion of the population maybe does vote Democrats, your vote doesn't mean anything if you actually don't take the opportunity to use it.
Well, Hillary's leading in the polls over pretty much every Republican right now, but Democrat Jack Conway led the Kentucky race the entire way in the polls and came up short. When you look at these losses and you look at the poll numbers, aren't these numbers hugely concerning for Hillary Clinton and the Democrats heading into 2016, Peter?
I think one of the things that would be of concern to Hillary, picking up on Eric's point, is in fact voter apathy. We've seen that Hillary's negatives run very close to her positives. In other words, if you ask someone, do you support her, the number of people who say they do and the number of people who say, for example, they don't trust her, they're not that different. And so if people don't show up on Election Day to vote for Hillary, I think that's going to be as big a problem for her as whatever the Republicans are doing. This is going to be probably a closer race at the end of the day than we think, largely because of the question of turnout. A lot of these local elections, and even up to state legislatures like we've had in Virginia, was a race that everyone was watching. They're decided by, on the scale of things, relatively few votes. Josh pointed out that unions will turn out their people. In certain areas, for example, where they've got a lot of senior citizens, there'll be buses and things. In the African-American community, they'll be organizing on a church level. And they can turn those people out fairly reliably. When you scale that up nationally, it gets a lot harder to do in significant numbers. Young people, as Josh pointed out, not only are not worried about politicians that are going to put gays back in the closet or anything like that, they don't turn out to vote very much, and that also skews the Republican Party. I suspect Hillary's concerns are going to be largely getting her own people to come out and vote, and then pulling as many women out of the Republican pool as she possibly can. The hardcore Republican voters, they're not going to vote for her no matter what.
Well, in 2008, before all these losses, we saw Obama help his party win a big-time Senate seats, House seats, state legislature seats. Josh, do you think Hillary, being a woman, can help carry her party to maybe win back some of these seats in 2016?
I think that's two different questions, really, because in 2008, you're right, Obama did, the Obama coalition of voters and organizers and whatever did bring in some big wins for Democrats. But remember, this was also after, people were tired of Bush. There was, it was just the Democratic brand was much better than it is now. But one thing that is interesting about Hillary being the, first woman president is that she's able to sort of campaign on that in a way that President Obama wasn't. He was very notoriously distant when it came to race. He was, very rarely did he talk about I want to be the first black president, because, there's arguments saying that would have been bad. However, with the woman thing, I think that people are more receptive to that, especially post-Obama. Now, the one thing that's interesting is that Hillary Clinton is a notorious Republican villain, you know what I mean? And so if she's on the ticket, it may end up helping Republicans in swing districts, where she may take a state, but a district that was in play, the turnout might be higher because Republicans voting against Hillary. But, that's flip a coin. That might be true or not. That it's too far out to tell that.
Eric, do you think?
The thing to keep in mind is that while Hillary is, in fact, a very polarizing candidate, as Josh pointed out, Bill perhaps somewhat inexplicably, is still amazingly popular. And so when you vote for Hillary, you get Bill at the same time. And so in places where Hillary would scare people out of the room, Bill can probably pull some more of them in. And that remains a real strength for Bill, and he's probably a huge asset to the Democrats going forward towards 2016.
Eric, do you think Hillary Clinton being on the ballot is going to help Democrats in state and local elections, or will actually hurt them because of how much people hate Hillary?
I think it actually will serve to hurt her. When we look at voters that are on the fence, if Donald Trump can come out with a plan that's somewhat moderate, I mean, he's always going to have the racist rhetoric at the wall and such, but if he can come out with something moderate that liberals can grasp onto, you might find that people that are on the fence forced to choose between Hillary and Trump may choose a Trump because of how much they distrust Hillary. There's numerous sources you can look at of Hillary being caught lying on the spot. I saw a video just the other day where she was discussing a trip to Bosnia with Clinton, her husband, in the 90s, saying that she was under sniper fire and under attack. But when you watch the video, she gets out of the helicopter and she's waving to people and shaking hands and kissing babies. And she was confronted on this, and she tried to play it off as something like, oh, I was just deprived of sleep. So, the problem with Clinton is that she does lie, and it's known, and that might dissuade voters from choosing her in an election.